Acti. Noah Hale learned early that pain had a schedule. It came every 2 weeks, sometimes sooner if the doctors called in a panic. It came with white walls and antiseptic air, with nurses who would not meet his eyes and a woman who signed forms without looking up from her phone. It came with needles thick enough to make his fingers shake and with a quiet understanding that no one would stop if he begged. Today it came on his birthday. No one in the Hale household remembered that detail. Not the man who legally called himself Noah's father, not the woman who smiled thinly whenever she spoke his name, and certainly not the pale boy upstairs whose life Noah's blood had been feeding for years. Noah stood in the kitchen at dawn rinsing out a chipped mug. He had woken before the alarm as he always did, his body trained to exhaustion. The bruise along his inner elbow had barely faded from the last transfusion. He kept his sleeves down anyway. Old habits were safer than hope. "Hospital," Mrs. Hale said from the doorway. No greeting. No explanation. Noah nodded. "I'll get my coat." She paused, eyes flicking over him the way one might inspect a bag of groceries. "Don't eat." The doctor said fasting gives better yield. Yield. The word followed him out the door. The car ride was silent except for the hum of tires and the sound of Noah's own breathing. He watched the city pass, people walking dogs, a bakery opening its shutters, a couple laughing over coffee. Normal life moved forward without him as it always had. At the hospital they ushered him down familiar corridors. A nurse checked his chart, hesitated, then said, "You're back early." Mrs. Hale smiled. "Family emergency." The nurse didn't ask which family. They seated Noah in the reclining chair, cool vinyl against his skin. The 4-pole stood waiting like a quiet threat. As the nurse prepared the line, Noah stared at the ceiling tiles and counted cracks. He had learned long ago that counting made the pain manageable. "Try to relax," the nurse said gently, though her hands were efficient rather than kind. The needle slid in. The first pull always burned. The second made his head light. By the third the room tilted. "His pressure's low," the nurse muttered. "He'll be fine," Mrs. Hale said sharply. "He always is." The nurse hesitated, then adjusted the drip. Noah's fingers curled weakly. His mouth tasted like metal. "Mom," came a thin voice from the doorway. Victoria stood there, wrapped in a pale cardigan, eyes bright with something close to relief. "Is it working?" Mrs. Hale crossed the room immediately. "Of course, sweetheart. We just need a bit more." "A bit more." The machine hummed. Noah's vision blurred at the edges. He tried to speak but his tongue felt thick, useless. Then he heard it. "Not meant for him." "Once this is done, schedule the tests," Mr. Hale said quietly, standing just outside the curtain. "If his organs are still viable, we shouldn't waste the opportunity." Mrs. Hale sighed. "He's getting weaker. The heart might not last much longer." "We don't need the heart," he replied. "Corneas, kidneys, those alone will cover Victoria's treatment." Noah's breath stuttered. "And if he doesn't wake up?" she asked. Pause. "We'll say he ran away," Mr. Hale said. "No one will miss him." The words didn't strike like knives. They sang. The room felt suddenly very far away. The nurse was speaking, asking questions, but Noah couldn't hear her anymore. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, uneven and desperate. Inventory. That was what he was. Not a son. Not even a mistake. A resource. Something inside him fractured, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. The quiet endurance he had built his life on collapsed under the weight of certainty. They were going to kill him. The machine beeped sharply. "Stop," the nurse said, alarm creeping into her voice. "His pressure's dropping too fast." "He's fine," Mrs. Hale snapped. "Finish it." "I can't," the nurse said. "This is dangerous." Mr. Hale leaned in. "You're a professional. Do your job." Noah's fingers slipped from the armrest. The ceiling cracked and multiplied. Sound tunneled, distant and distorted. He thought dimly, "I don't want to die here." The thought came not as fear but as refusal. Darkness closed in. He woke to shouting. Not the sharp, controlled voices of the Hales, but something urgent, panicked. "Pressure's unstable. Get a gurney." Noah opened his eyes just enough to see chaos. Nurses moving fast. Someone pushing the chair back. The 4-line tugged painfully at his arm. Mrs. Hale was arguing with a doctor. "We didn't authorize." "You nearly killed him," the doctor said. Another minute and Noah didn't hear the rest. His body moved before his mind could catch up. As they wheeled him toward a room, as the 4-stand rattled alongside, Noah's fingers closed around the clamp on the line. He didn't know where the strength came from. Adrenaline maybe. Desperation. He pulled. Pain flared. Warmth spilled. Alarms shrieked. Hey! Noah slid from the gurney. He hit the floor hard, breath knocked from his lungs. Hands reached for him. Someone shouted his name, not kindly, not urgently enough. He crawled. The world swam, but the exit sign glowed red at the end of the corridor like a promise. Stop him. Noah staggered to his feet and ran. Cold air slapped his face as he burst through the emergency doors. The city spun. Lights smeared into color. His shoes slapped unevenly against pavement slick with morning dew. Every step hurt. His vision narrowed to a tunnel. His heart pounded like it was trying to escape his chest. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he couldn't stop. Footsteps echoed behind him. Get him, a voice said. Not hospital staff. Not police. Men in dark jackets moved too fast, too coordinated. Organ traffickers, his mind supplied dimly. The Hales hadn't been waiting for him to die. They'd been waiting for him to run. Noah turned into an alley, chest burning, legs trembling. He tripped, catching himself on a brick wall slick with grime. His hands came away red. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Noah screamed. The man yanked him back, and then suddenly let go. There was a sound like bone meeting bone. A grunt. Another body hitting the ground. Noah turned, barely coherent. A man stood between him and the traffickers. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in black from throat to boots. His face was hidden behind a mask, smooth and expressionless, eyes dark and unreadable. The second trafficker lunged. The masked man moved. It was fast. Brutal. Precise. Noah slid down the wall, strength gone. He watched dimly as the man dismantled his attackers with terrifying efficiency. No wasted motion. No hesitation. When it was over, the alley was silent except for Noah's ragged breathing. The man turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single point of contact. Something unreadable passed through the man's gaze. Then Noah's knees buckled. Strong arms caught him before he hit the ground. For the first time in his life, Noah was held without expectation. Stay awake, the man said, voice low and controlled. Noah tried. He really did. But the world faded anyway. As darkness claimed him, the last thing he felt was the steady beat of another heart beneath his cheek. Two. Noah drifted in and out of awareness, floating on pain and unfamiliar quiet. There was no beeping machine, no antiseptic sting, no sharp voice calling him by a name that felt more like a label than a person. Instead, there was warmth beneath him and the faint scent of clean linen. Something cool brushed his forehead, careful, deliberate. He frowned. Hands had never been careful with him before. When he opened his eyes, the ceiling above him was unfamiliar, dark wood beams instead of white tiles. Light filtered in through heavy curtains, muted and soft. For a moment, panic surged. Hospital. He tried to sit up, but his body protested immediately, dizziness washing over him. A low sound escaped his throat before he could stop it. Easy. The voice came from nearby. Come. Controlled. Mal. Noah froze. The masked man sat in a chair by the bed, elbows resting on his knees. The mask was gone now, but the shadows swallowed most of his face. He looked real in a way Noah hadn't expected. Solid, grounded, undeniably present. You lost a lot of blood, the man continued. If you move too fast, you'll pass out again. Noah swallowed. His mouth was dry. Where? Safe, the man said. For now. The answer didn't explain anything, but it didn't feel like a lie. Noah's gaze dropped to his arm. A clean bandage wrapped where the four had been torn out. No needle. No line. Relief and fear twisted together in his chest. You, his voice cracked. He tried again. You saved me. The man studied him for a long moment. His eyes were sharp, dark, assessing, but not unkind. Yes. Just that. No embellishment. Noah looked away, overwhelmed. Gratitude sat heavy in his chest, tangled with something else. Confusion, maybe? Or disbelief. No one helped him without wanting something in return. Why? He asked quietly. Silence stretched. You were in danger, the man said at last. That was enough. Noah almost laughed. The idea felt absurd. Enough had never been enough for anyone in his life. Before he could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. The man stood instantly. We need to move. Move? Noah echoed weakly. I can't. You can, the man said, already reaching for a jacket. I wouldn't ask if you couldn't. Something in his certainty steadied Noah more than reassurance ever could. Within minutes they were gone. The city looked different from the back seat of the car. Noah pressed his forehead lightly against the cool window, watching streets blur past. Neon signs flickered against rain-dark pavement. People moved with purpose, unaware of how close he had come to disappearing. The man drove without speaking, hands steady on the wheel. The interior of the car was quiet, insulated from the chaos outside. Noah's head drooped. Exhaustion crept back in. "Stay with me," the man said softly, glancing at him. "Just a little longer." Noah nodded, clinging to consciousness by sheer will. They stopped in an underground garage beneath an unmarked building. The man guided Noah out, an arm firm around his waist. Noah leaned into the support without thinking, too tired to pretend he didn't need it. Inside, the space was minimal but clean. No clutter. No personal photos. It felt temporary, like a place meant for passing through. The man helped Noah onto a couch and disappeared briefly. When he returned, he carried water and a small medical kit. "Drink," he instructed. Noah obeyed, sipping slowly. The water grounded him, eased the burning in his throat. The man knelt in front of him, checking the bandage with practiced hands. Noah tensed instinctively, but the touch remained gentle. "You've done this before?" Noah murmured. The man's hands paused for a fraction of a second. "Yes." "Are you a doctor?" "No." The answer was immediate. Noah nodded, not sure why he'd expected anything else. "What's your name?" he asked. The man met his gaze. Something unreadable flickered there. "I can't tell you that." The words stung more than Noah expected. "Oh," he said quietly. "Right. I'm not leaving you unprotected," the man added, as if sensing the shift. "But names make things complicated." Noah forced a small smile. "You already saved my life. I won't ask for more." The man watched him carefully, as if weighing something. "You shouldn't go back," he said. Noah's smile faded. "I know. They'll look for you. I know. You have no money. No documents. I know." Each truth landed heavily, but Noah didn't flinch. The fear was there, coiled tight in his chest, but beneath it lay something new. Resolve. "I won't go back," he said firmly. "Even if it kills me." The man nodded once, slow and approving. "Good." Night fell. The man gave Noah food, simple, warm, more than Noah was used to. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, half expecting it to be taken away. It wasn't. As the hours passed, Noah's strength returned in cautious increments. His thoughts, however, spiraled. "What happens now?" he asked eventually. The man leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I'll make some calls." "To who?" "People who can make your disappearance permanent." Noah's heart skipped. "Disappear?" "For a while," the man clarified. "Long enough for the heat to die down. And then?" The man hesitated. "That depends on what you want." The question caught Noah off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never chosen anything." The man's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Then we'll start with survival," he said. Morning came with distant sirens and muted sunlight. Noah woke on the couch, a blanket tucked around him. For a brief, disorienting second, he thought everything had been a dream. Then he saw the bandage. Reality settled in. The man was gone. Panic flared, sharp and sudden. He sat up too fast, dizziness rushing in. "Hello?" No answer. The apartment felt empty in a way that pressed against his ribs. Had he been abandoned after all? Just as the thought took hold, the door opened. The man stepped inside, jacket damp with rain. Noah exhaled shakily, relief washing over him before he could stop it. "I thought," he cut himself off, embarrassed. "I wouldn't leave you like that," the man said quietly. Noah nodded, throat tight. "I made arrangements," the man continued. "Someone will come for you tonight. They'll take you somewhere secure." "Someone else?" Noah asked, anxiety creeping back. "Yes." Noah stared at the floor. "Will I see you again?" The man didn't answer immediately. "That's not safe," he said at last. Noah's chest ached. He hadn't realized how much he wanted the answer to be different. "I understand," he said, though the words tasted bitter. The man stepped closer. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "What they did to you, it wasn't your fault. You didn't survive because you're useful. You survived because you fought." Noah's eyes burned. "I didn't fight," he whispered. "I ran." The man shook his head. "Running is fighting." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the man reached up and pulled something from his pocket, a small card. He pressed it into Noah's hand. "If you're ever in danger again," he said, "use this." Noah looked down. No name. Just a symbol and a number. He closed his fingers around it like it was something precious. "Thank you," he said, voice unsteady. "For everything." The man hesitated, then did something unexpected. He reached out and brushed his thumb lightly over Noah's knuckles. It was a small gesture. Careful. Intimate in a way Noah felt down to his bones. "Live," the man said. "That's all I ask." Then he turned and walked away. That night, as Noah was led out through a different exit by people who didn't give their names, he looked back one last time. The building stood silent, anonymous. But the memory of steady hands and a calm voice stayed with him. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and uncertainty, something else took root. A sense that his life, however fragile, had finally begun. Act 3. Noah was driven out of the city before dawn. The car was quiet, armored, and smelled faintly of leather and rain. The man beside him, one of the unnamed contacts, did not speak. Noah didn't ask questions. He had learned that silence was safer than curiosity. Still, his fingers worried the edge of the small card in his pocket. "Live," the masked man had said. Noah stared out the window as Valenport faded into gray distance. He wondered what living was supposed to look like. They arrived at a private airstrip just as the sky began to pale. Noah followed instructions numbly, signing forms he barely understood, boarding a plane that felt far too expensive for someone like him. The engines roared and the ground dropped away. For the first time, no one was bleeding him dry. The thought was dizzying. The estate sat beyond iron gates and old trees, stone rising from the earth like something permanent and unmovable. Noah stood at the entrance hall, shoulders tight beneath borrowed clothes, feeling painfully small. Every surface gleamed. Every step echoed. "This way," the aide said. They led him into a study lined with books and dark wood. Sunlight slanted through tall windows. At the far end of the room stood an elderly man, his posture straight despite the cane resting beside his chair. He turned. And Noah felt it, an unfamiliar pull in his chest, sharp and undeniable. The man's eyes widened. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then the man took a breath that trembled slightly. "Noah," he said, voice rough with something like disbelief. "You look like her." Noah swallowed. "I'm sorry. I don't think." "My daughter," the man said gently. "You have her eyes." The aide withdrew silently, closing the door behind them. The man gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Please. Sit." Noah obeyed, heart pounding. "My name is Victor Ashford," the man said. "And if the test results are correct, you are my grandson." The words landed like a physical blow. Noah shook his head automatically. "That's not possible." Victor's gaze softened. "I wish it weren't," he said quietly. "It would mean she lived." Noah's hands clenched in his lap. "I don't understand." Victor reached for a folder on the desk and slid it across. Inside were documents, photos, an old picture of a young woman smiling shyly at the camera. "She disappeared 20 years ago," Victor said. "We searched everywhere. We were told she died." Noah stared at the photo, his throat tight. He had never seen a picture of his birth mother. The Hales had burned anything that might connect him to a past before them. "I was adopted," Noah Visible said. "They said my parents were dead." Victor's jaw tightened. "They lied." The room felt too warm. Too real. "You were taken," Victor continued. "Illegally. Sold through channels we didn't uncover until much later." Noah's breath came shallow. His life, the abuse, the hospital visits, the blood, shifted under a new, terrible light. "I'm nobody," Noah said weakly. "There's been a mistake." Victor stood slowly, crossing the room until he stood in front of Noah. He crouched with difficulty, bringing them eye to eye. "You survived," Victor said firmly. "That alone makes you someone." His hand trembled as he rested it over Noah's. The contact was tentative, like he was afraid Noah might disappear. "I'm so sorry," Victor whispered. Something broke. Noah bowed his head, breath hitching. He hadn't expected tears, but they came anyway, silent, unstoppable. Not grief alone, but the unbearable weight of being seen. Victor straightened, giving him space. "You don't have to accept anything," he said after a moment. "The name. The estate. None of it." Noah wiped his face, ashamed. "Then why bring me here?" "Because you deserve to know the truth," Victor replied. "And because there are people who will not stop looking for you." Noah stiffened. "The Hales. And others," Victor said. "Your existence threatens certain arrangements." Noah thought of the men in dark jackets. Of the speed with which they'd hunted him. "I don't want to be used again," he said quietly. Victor nodded. "You won't be." Silence settled between them. Finally Noah asked, "What happens now?" Victor smiled faintly. "That depends on you." The days that followed passed in a haze. Doctors examined Noah, real examinations, careful and respectful. They apologized when tests hurt. They asked for consent. He didn't know how to respond to that. He was given a room larger than the entire apartment the Hales had allowed him to sleep in. Clothes that fit. Food that was his to choose. At night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for pain that didn't come. He thought of the masked man often. He wondered if this was what he'd meant. Victor visited daily, sometimes just to sit with him. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He told Noah stories, of business, of mistakes, of a daughter who had been stubborn and kind and fiercely protective of those she loved. "She would have adored you," Victor said one evening. Noah didn't know how to respond, so he said nothing. On the 5th day, Victor brought him into the study again. "There's something else you need to know," he said. Noah braced himself. "You are my sole living heir," Victor said. "And that makes you a target." Noah's stomach dropped. "I don't want this," he said immediately. "I don't want power." Victor regarded him thoughtfully. "Power doesn't ask what we want," he said. "But it does offer protection." Noah exhaled slowly. "There's also a contract," Victor continued. "Signed years ago. A political alliance between families." Noah's chest tightened. "An alliance? An engagement?" Victor said carefully. The word echoed. "No," Noah said, panic rising. "I won't." "You are not required to accept it," Victor interrupted. "But you should know it exists." Noah pressed his palms together, grounding himself. "Who?" Victor hesitated. "Julian Cross." The name stirred something faint in Noah's memory, not recognition but weight. Like a door he didn't know he was about to open. "Heir to the Cross Syndicate," Victor added. "Dangerous. Powerful." Noah's mind flashed to dark eyes behind a mask. "No," he thought immediately. "It can't be." "It's just a contract," Victor said. "One we can dissolve if necessary." Noah nodded, forcing calm. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course." That night, Noah stood alone in his room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He looked the same, too thin, too pale, but everything else had shifted. He touched the glass. Who was he now? A victim? A survivor? An heir? He thought of the card in his pocket. And for the first time, instead of fear, he felt something else stir. Anger. The Hale family fell faster than Noah expected. Evidence surfaced. Medical records, illegal transfusions, financial trails that led to organ brokers. Investigations began quietly, efficiently. Victor did not shield them. Noah watched from a distance, emotions tangled. Satisfaction warred with a hollow ache. One afternoon, Victor handed him a new identification folder. "Your legal name," he said, "is Noah Ashford." Noah stared at the documents. Ashford. The word felt heavy and solid. "Do I have to use it?" he asked. "No," Victor said. "But it's yours if you want it." Noah closed the folder slowly. "I want it," he said. Victor smiled, pride flickering in his eyes. As Noah returned to his room, his phone vibrated. A new device, secure, given to him that morning. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Yes." There was a brief pause on the line. "Your arrangements are complete," a familiar voice said. Noah's breath caught. He knew that voice. "Are you safe?" the man asked quietly. Noah closed his eyes. "Yes," he said. "Because of you." Another pause. "Good," the man said. "Then my job is done." "Wait," Noah said quickly. "What's your name?" Silence. Then softly, "It's better if you don't know." The line went dead. Noah lowered the phone, heart racing. Outside his window, the estate grounds stretched wide and protected. For the first time, Noah understood something vital. Survival had brought him here. But what he chose to do next would define everything. Act 4. Noah's first day inside Ashford Group headquarters began with a lie. Not a dangerous one. Not the kind that hollowed him out from the inside like the lies he'd grown up with. This one felt almost gentle. In turn. The word sat neatly on his temporary badge, printed in clean black letters beneath a photograph he barely recognized as himself. He stood in the mirrored elevator, adjusting the collar of his shirt, heart racing as the doors slid open. Victor had suggested it carefully, thoughtfully. Power is easier to understand from the inside, his grandfather had said. And anonymity for now may be safer. Noah had agreed before fear could talk him out of it. The building was all glass and steel, humming with quiet authority. People moved with purpose, confident in their belonging. Noah kept his head down, reminding himself he had survived worse than this. He was ushered into an open-plan office and assigned to data review, boring, unobtrusive work. Perfect. It was almost comforting how ordinary it felt. Until the room changed. The shift was subtle, voices lowering, posture straightening. Noah looked up instinctively. A man had entered the space. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark, tailored lines that suggested control rather than wealth. He walked with the unhurried confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Noah's breath caught. He knew that silhouette. The man stopped near the glass-walled conference room, speaking quietly to an executive. When he turned, Noah's chest tightened painfully. Dark eyes, sharp features, a presence that seemed to command attention without demanding it. The masked man. Except now, unmasked, exposed to the light. Julian Cross. Noah's hands went cold. It can't be, his mind insisted. But recognition burned deep and undeniable. This was the man who had carried him out of an alley, who had told him to live. Julian glanced across the room. Their eyes met. For a fraction of a second, the world stilled. Something flickered in Julian's gaze. Recognition, confusion, something too fast to name. Then it vanished behind smooth professionalism. Julian turned away. Noah exhaled shakily, sinking back into his chair. He hadn't been recognized. Relief warred with something else, an ache he didn't yet have words for. Over the next weeks, Julian became a constant presence. Not directly, not at first. He appeared in meetings Noah observed from the edges, his voice calm and decisive. He passed through the office with a nod or a glance, leaving an echo of quiet authority in his wake. Noah learned things about him without meaning to. Julian drank his coffee black. He disliked inefficiency. He listened more than he spoke. And when he did speak, people listened. Noah worked harder than he ever had, driven by a need he didn't fully understand. He stayed late, double-checked numbers, offered quiet solutions when he thought no one was watching. One evening, long after most of the floor had emptied, a voice spoke behind him. "You caught an inconsistency." Noah startled, spinning in his chair. Julian stood a few feet away, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Without the distance of authority, he felt dangerously close. I'm sorry," Noah said automatically. "I didn't mean to overstep." Julian raised an eyebrow. "You flagged a discrepancy that 3 analysts missed. That's not overstepping." Noah swallowed. "It was just math." Julian studied him with unsettling intensity. "What's your name?" The question landed heavier than it should have. "Noah," he said. He hesitated. "Just Noah." Julian nodded. "Julian." As if Noah didn't already know. They stood in silence, something charged humming between them. "Thank you," Julian said finally, "for bringing it to my attention." "You're welcome," Noah replied, heart pounding. Julian turned to leave, then paused. "Don't stay too late," he added. "This place will eat you alive if you let it." Then he was gone. Noah stared after him, pulse racing. Their interactions became frequent. Julian sought Noah out under the guise of work, asking questions, requesting his input, pulling him into brief discussions that stretched longer than necessary. Outside the boardroom, stripped of titles and distance, Julian was different. Warmer. He smiled rarely, but when he did, it felt like a secret. He listened carefully, asked questions that weren't about work. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Julian offered Noah a ride home. "You don't have to," Noah said, though part of him wanted to say yes desperately. "I know," Julian replied. "I want to." The car ride was quiet but not uncomfortable. The city blurred past, lights reflecting in the windshield. "You don't talk much about yourself," Julian said eventually. Noah stared out the window. "There's not much to say." Julian glanced at him. "I doubt that." Noah almost laughed. At the apartment building where Noah was staying under an assumed lease, Julian pulled over. "Coffee?" Julian asked suddenly. "Sometime." "Not work-related." Noah's heart skipped. "I'd like that," he said before fear could stop him. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners into long walks through the city at night. With Julian, Noah felt seen. Not as an heir, not as a resource, not even as a survivor, but as himself. Julian never pushed. Never asked questions Noah wasn't ready to answer. He offered stories instead, of a childhood shaped by expectations, of a father who valued strength above tenderness, of a world that demanded sharp edges. "I don't like contracts," Julian admitted one night, staring out over the river. "They pretend choice doesn't matter." Noah's chest tightened. "Do you have many?" Noah asked carefully. Julian's jaw tensed. Too many. Noah looked away, guilt twisting in his gut. He was lying by omission. And yet, this felt real. One evening, after a particularly long day, Julian walked Noah to his door. They stood there, close enough that Noah could feel the warmth of Julian's body, smell the faint trace of soap and rain. "You're different," Julian said quietly. Noah's breath caught. "Different how?" "Braver than you think," Julian replied. "Stronger too." Noah laughed softly, disbelief lacing the sound. "You don't know me." Julian stepped closer. "I'd like to." The words hovered between them. Noah's heart hammered painfully. "Julian," he began, unsure how to finish. Julian lifted a hand, hesitating just short of touching Noah's cheek. "Tell me to stop." Noah didn't. The kiss was careful, tentative, more question than claim. Noah's hands trembled as he responded, years of fear and longing tangled in the simple press of lips. When they pulled back, Julian rested his forehead against Noah's. "I shouldn't," he murmured. Noah knew what he meant. "But you want to," Noah said softly. Julian exhaled. "Yes." At Ashford Estate, Victor watched Noah change. He stood taller. He smiled more easily. Something guarded and wounded in him began, slowly, to soften. "Be careful," Victor warned gently one evening. "Attachments complicate things." Noah nodded. "I know." But he didn't stop. Because for the first time, the future felt like something he wanted, not just something to endure. Julian, meanwhile, sat alone in his office late at night, staring at an engagement contract he had never wanted. Noah Ashford. The name stared back at him. A stranger. A title. A cage. Julian closed the folder, jaw set. He knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was falling in love with someone he wasn't supposed to. And whatever the cost, he intended to choose that love. The first time Julian broke Noah's heart, he did it without knowing Noah was standing in the room. The boardroom was glass and steel, sunlight cutting sharp lines across the polished table. Noah sat near the end, quiet, unobtrusive, his intern badge clipped neatly to his jacket. He had been invited only to take notes. He didn't expect to become collateral damage. Julian stood at the head of the table, posture rigid, jaw set. Executives flanked him on either side. Across from them sat Victor Ashford, calm and unreadable. "I won't proceed with the engagement," Julian said. The room stilled. Noah's pen froze mid-word. Victor raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant decision," he said evenly. "You understand the implications." "I do," Julian replied. His voice was steady, but Noah could hear something taut beneath it. "And I'm prepared to accept them." One of the executives cleared his throat. "May we ask the reason?" Julian didn't hesitate. "I refuse to marry a name," he said. "A contract. A symbol of power. I won't bind my life to someone I don't know." Noah's pulse thundered in his ears. Julian's gaze flicked briefly, toward the far end of the table. Toward Noah. "And," Julian continued, voice lowering, "because I'm already in love with someone else." He stared down at his notes, the page blurring. Around him, murmurs rose, shock rippling through the room. Victor said nothing. Julian straightened. "That is all." The meeting dissolved into hushed chaos. Noah stayed seated, hands clenched in his lap, fighting the urge to run. He should have felt relieved. Instead, it felt like something precious had shattered. Julian found him that evening. Noah was alone in the office, lights dimmed, pretending to work because he didn't know what else to do with the ache in his chest. Julian closed the door behind him softly. "You heard?" Julian said. Noah nodded, still not looking up. "Everyone did." Julian moved closer. "I meant what I said." Noah swallowed. "I know." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. "I couldn't go through with it," Julian continued. "Not knowing the person. Not when it felt wrong from the start." Noah's fingers tightened around his pen until his knuckles ached. "You didn't even try," he said quietly. Julian frowned. "Try." "To know him," Noah said, voice trembling despite his effort to keep it steady. "You rejected someone without ever meeting them." Julian hesitated. "That's not." "I know," Noah interrupted. He finally looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You didn't mean to hurt anyone." Julian's expression softened. "Noah." "I need some air," Noah said, standing abruptly. "I'm sorry." Julian reached for him but stopped short, hand falling back to his side. Noah left before Julian could say anything else. That night, Noah sat in his apartment, knees pulled to his chest, the card from the masked man clenched in his hand like a lifeline. Julian had chosen him. And still, Julian had rejected him. The irony was cruel enough to almost be funny. Noah pressed his forehead against the cool window, watching city lights flicker below. For the first time since leaving the Hales, he felt truly small again. Power, he realized, didn't protect you from pain. It only changed its shape. The next morning, Victor asked him to join him for breakfast. "You heard?" Victor said calmly, pouring tea. "Yes," Noah replied. "And?" Victor prompted. Noah stared into his cup. "He doesn't want the engagement." Victor studied him for a long moment. "Is that what's upsetting you?" Noah's throat tightened. "I didn't want it either." "But," Victor said gently. Noah exhaled shakily. But he didn't even know who he was rejecting. Victor leaned back thoughtful. "Do you love him?" The question landed softly and devastatingly. "Yes," Noah whispered. Victor nodded once. "Then the truth will surface eventually." Noah shook his head. "When it does, he'll realize he hurt the person he loves most." Victor's gaze sharpened. "Or he'll realize he chose you twice." The words lingered, fragile with possibility. While Noah struggled with heartbreak, he did not stop moving. He learned. He watched. He remembered every moment of helplessness in hospital rooms and hallways. The Hale family's downfall accelerated. Records were leaked. Doctors testified. Financial accounts were frozen. Media attention followed swiftly and mercilessly. Noah didn't attend the hearings. He didn't need to. Revenge, he discovered, didn't require cruelty, only truth. Meanwhile, another set of eyes turned toward him. Seraphine Vale. She was beautiful in the way sharp objects were beautiful. Her smile was practiced, her gaze calculating. She attended the same events, lingered too close in conversations, asked too many questions. "You're fascinating," she told Noah one evening, wine glass poised elegantly in her hand. "From nowhere to everywhere." Noah smiled politely. "I had help." "So I hear," Seraphine said, eyes flicking briefly toward Julian across the room. "It's a shame about the engagement." Noah's smile tightened. "Is it?" Seraphine laughed softly. "Power is easier when shared. Alone, it makes you vulnerable." Noah met her gaze steadily. "I'm not alone." Seraphine's smile didn't reach her eyes. The trap was laid subtly. An anonymous message arrived on Noah's phone late one evening. "Your father is dying. He wants to see you." The word father twisted painfully in his chest. Victor warned him immediately. This could be a setup. "I know," Noah said. "Then don't go." Noah looked down at his hands, steady now where they once trembled. "If it's real, I need closure." "And if it isn't?" Noah's eyes hardened. "Then I end it." He went alone. The hospital room smelled wrong, too clean, too quiet. The man in the bed looked smaller than Noah remembered, diminished by fear and illness. "You came?" the man rasped. Noah stood at the foot of the bed. "Why?" "Your sister," the man whispered. She's with the wrong people." Noah felt the prickle of unease too late. The door closed softly behind him. A sting at his neck. The world tilted. Julian felt it the moment Noah didn't answer his messages. An hour passed. Then two. Unease coiled tight in his gut. He checked hospital records. Security logs. Traffic feeds. Nothing. Then his phone rang. An unknown number. Julian answered without hesitation. "You broke the wrong contract," Seraphine Vale purred. "And now you're about to lose the wrong person." Julian's blood went cold. "Where is he?" Julian demanded. Seraphine laughed. "Come find out." The line went dead. Julian didn't hesitate. The careful restraint he had built his life on shattered, leaving something sharp and ruthless in its wake. He mobilized every resource at his disposal: contacts, surveillance, force. And as he tore through the city in search of Noah, one truth burned clear and unforgiving in his mind. He had chosen love. Now he would bleed for it. Act 6. Noah woke to darkness and the taste of iron. His head throbbed, a dull, insistent pain radiating behind his eyes. His wrists were bound, not tightly but deliberately, enough to remind him that escape would not be easy. The floor beneath him was cold concrete, the air damp and echoing. A warehouse, he guessed. Figures moved somewhere beyond his blurred vision. Voices echoed, distorted by distance and pain. He breathed slowly, forcing himself not to panic. Think, he told himself. Survive first. Feel later. A familiar truth. Footsteps approached. Seraphine Vale stepped into view, heels clicking sharply against the concrete. She wore a tailored coat the color of old wine, immaculate despite the surroundings. Her smile was razor thin. You're calmer than I expected, she said. Noah shifted, testing the restraints. You drugged me. You kidnapped me. I assume you didn't bring me here to chat. Seraphine laughed softly. Straight to the point. I admire that. She circled him slowly, appraising. You ruined my plans, you know. The Ashfords were supposed to fall quietly. Instead, you dismantled everything with a smile. I told the truth, Noah replied evenly. What happened after that wasn't my doing. Seraphine stopped in front of him. Truth is just another weapon, she said. You used it better than I expected. She leaned closer. But Julian Cross made a mistake. Noah's chest tightened. Leave him out of this. Oh, I can't, Seraphine said lightly. He's the entire reason you're here. She straightened, signaling to someone behind her. A camera light flicked on. You're going to disappear, she continued. Publicly disgraced. Quietly erased. And Julian will watch his world burn because of the choice he made. Noah met her gaze steadily. He didn't choose power. No, Seraphine agreed. He chose you. Her smile sharpened. That makes you a liability. Julian found the warehouse just before dawn. He stood in the shadows, rain soaking into his coat, the city silent around him. His men waited for his signal, weapons concealed, movements precise. This was not a negotiation. Julian had abandoned restraint the moment he learned Noah was gone. Security feeds, intercepted calls, Seraphine's patterns, it all converged here. The place smelled of oil and rust and old secrets. Julian closed his eyes briefly. Please be alive. Then he raised his hand. They moved. The assault was swift and merciless. Guards fell before they could raise alarms. Doors were breached. Julian led the charge himself, driven by something fierce and unrelenting. Inside, chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked. Shouts echoed. Julian ignored it all, following instinct, memory, and terror straight through the maze of concrete and steel. He burst into the central chamber just as Seraphine lifted her hand. Stop, she shouted. Julian froze. Noah knelt at the center of the room, pale but upright, eyes locked on Julian with a mixture of shock and fierce relief. You came, Noah breathed. Julian crossed the distance in seconds, dropping to his knees in front of him, hands already working at the restraints. I'm here, he said hoarsely. I'm here. Seraphine laughed, sharp and bitter. Touching. Truly. Julian didn't look at her. He focused entirely on Noah. I'm sorry, he said. I should have told you sooner. I should have. Noah shook his head, breath hitching as the restraints loosened. Later, he said. Just, later. The restraints fell away. Julian pulled Noah into his arms, holding him tightly, one hand cradling the back of his head. Noah clung to him, shaking now that the danger had passed. Seraphine's smile vanished. Kill him, she snapped. The order never landed. Julian's men moved instantly, weapons trained. Seraphine was restrained before she could take another step. She struggled, fury etched across her face. You think this ends here? She hissed. You think love makes you untouchable? Julian stood slowly, keeping one arm around Noah. No, he said coldly. Power does. He nodded once. Seraphine was dragged away, screaming. Dawn broke pale and quiet. Noah sat on the hood of Julian's car, wrapped in a coat that smelled unmistakably like Julian, clean, warm, safe. His hands trembled faintly, adrenaline still burning through his system. Julian stood in front of him, eyes dark with worry. Are you hurt? Julian asked for the third time. Noah shook his head. Drugged. Not injured. Julian exhaled, relief flooding his expression. I was so scared, Noah admitted softly. Julian swallowed hard. Me too. Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally Noah spoke. You found out. Julian nodded. Everything. Noah's chest tightened. And? Julian stepped closer. And nothing changed. Noah laughed weakly. That's not true. Julian lifted Noah's chin gently, forcing him to meet his gaze. I broke the engagement because I didn't want a name. Or a title. Or a contract. His voice softened. I fell in love with you before I knew who you were. And I'd do it again. Tears burned in Noah's eyes. You rejected me, Noah whispered. Without knowing. Julian's expression twisted with regret. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life making that right, if you let me. Noah studied him, really studied him, seeing not the syndicate heir or the masked rescuer, but the man who had chosen him twice without realizing it. I was afraid, Noah said quietly. That if I told you, you'd choose power instead. Julian shook his head. Power chose me. I chose you. Noah closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Then he leaned forward, resting his forehead against Julian's. I choose you too, he said. Julian kissed him, not desperate this time but certain. A promise rather than a plea. The gala was held a week later. Press, investors, rivals, everyone came expecting spectacle. They got truth. Seraphine's financial manipulations were exposed in meticulous detail. Accounts frozen. Allies arrested. Her empire collapsed publicly, spectacularly. Noah stood beside Victor Ashford, calm and composed, answering questions with quiet authority. When asked about the engagement, he didn't hesitate. There was a contract, Noah said evenly. But contracts don't define love. The cameras turned. Julian stepped forward. I love him, Julian said simply. And that's the only alliance that matters to me. The room buzzed with shock. Noah took Julian's hand. Victor watched them, pride softening his stern features. Later that night, away from the noise, Noah and Julian stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Light stretched endlessly below them. Julian reached into his pocket, fingers brushing nervously against something small. Noah, he said. Noah turned, eyebrow raised. You look terrified. Julian huffed a quiet laugh. I am. He dropped to one knee. I won't offer you a contract, Julian said. Or power. Or protection you don't already have. He opened the box, revealing a simple ring. I offer you myself, he continued. Every day. Every choice. If you want it. Noah stared at him, heart pounding painfully. You already chose me, Noah said softly. Julian smiled. I want you to choose me back. Publicly. Permanently. Noah laughed through tears. You're unfair. Julian grinned. I know. Noah held out his hand. Yes. Julian slid the ring into place, hands trembling. They stood together, foreheads touching, the city breathing around them. For the first time in his life, Noah did not feel like he was surviving. He was home.